On today's show, the Occupy movement is getting some much-needed funding thanks to Ben & Jerry's ice cream. In Virginia, a new attack ad is demanding the release of a birth certificate for Hank the cat. And have you heard about Occupy the Hood? We'll tell you about the group's message to reach out to communities of color. I'm Jared Jacang Mayer. Each week, we bring you stories from the front lines of the Occupy Wall Street movement and give the microphone to you, the 99%. You're watching Occupy the Media. Thanks for joining us on Occupy the Media. If you're catching us for the first time, this show is an effort by Free Speech TV to stay on top of the latest news coming out of the Occupy Wall Street movement. We want to cover the real issues you won't hear about from the corporate media, and we want to do this by giving the mic to you, the 99%. So join the conversation by giving us a call toll-free at 877-575-FSTV. So let's get started with the latest headlines from the Occupy movement. Hundreds of Cincinnati protesters have been cleared of criminal charges as part of a legal deal reached between city officials and Occupy Cincinnati. But as part of the settlement, only a portion of the park will be designated as 24-hour public space. In Texas, the group Occupy Collin County has been hit with a subpoena. A local attorney is demanding the group turn over the names and email addresses of everyone involved with their website. Occupiers say they're being targeted for speaking out against this lawyer and previous cases he's taken on. There are now 10 candidates for Congress who are associating themselves with the Occupy movement. It's a testament to the popularity of the 99% message. But so far, the Occupy movement itself hasn't gotten explicitly involved in party politics, citing big money's control over the electoral system. 4 Occupy Oakland protesters have been barred from returning to Frank Ogawa Plaza. And now the demonstrators are challenging the court's stay-away order. The Northern California ACLU is taking the case. They say the ban infringes on protesters' First Amendment rights. In Connecticut, Occupy New Haven has responded to an eviction notice issued by the city. Activists wrote a letter to New Haven officials saying they will not leave. Occupiers also told the city to stop home foreclosures and provide more low-income housing, among other demands. And in Madison, Wisconsin, thousands of workers and their supporters marched against Governor Scott Walker. Here are the details.
A celebration of democracy drew crowds of over 60,000 in Wisconsin on Sunday. Occupy groups were joined by other activists and unions in overwhelming numbers outside the Capitol building. The exuberant crowd collectively called for an unseating of Republican Governor Scott Walker, who last year tried to silence public workers' voices over salaries, pensions, and occupational rights.
A year ago, and we had occupied our Capitol in protest over the illegal attempt to pass a bill to end 50 years of our bargaining rights.
The crowd is a reassuring sight as the Occupy movement nears its 6-month anniversary. The movement is gaining steam as protesters prepare for an American spring against government and corporate corruption.
The message of solidarity and the power of working families working together.
This is Caroline Briggs for Occupy the Media.
All right, that wraps up the latest headlines from the Occupy front, but let's take a minute to dig into this story from Madison. Sitting here in our studio today is Marcy Miranda, Free Speech TV's news producer, and Don Rojas, FSTV executive director. So, Marcy, more huge anti-Scott Walker protests there in Wisconsin, but where do we go from here?
We go to a re-election, not a re-election campaign, a recall election campaign. The people there are really upset with what Governor Walker did, and a lot of people want to see him out. So there's been an outpouring since basically around this time last year of people campaigning, going out to say, we don't want you as our governor anymore because you've overstepped the lines and you no longer represent our interests, which is ultimately what a legislator is supposed to do.
And so this recall election is already going to happen. They've gotten enough signatures to put that in motion, but they now have 65,000 protesters heading out there to the Capitol. Don, why here, why now? What what are protesters and union officials trying to say here?
Well, here again, the people of Wisconsin telling the nation, showing the nation that the social justice movement in that state is alive and well. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going to increase in the coming weeks and months as the campaign to recall Scott Walker gathers momentum. Bear in mind, this is, you know, Wisconsin has a long progressive tradition to it. Right? It is the state that gave us Fighting Bob La Follette. It is the birthplace of the AFSCME. It has been the state that has upheld collective bargaining and union rights for decades.
But of course, even outside of Wisconsin, there have been states where similar laws targeting collective bargaining have been passed by conservative Republican governors. Right. So is this sort of a larger message that they're trying to send, and will this be part of a bigger campaign against these types of laws?
I mean, I think so. I think it'd be safe to say so. I think a lot of what makes this one-year anniversary so special as well is because of the Occupy movement and the momentum behind that. The people that have come forward and said, you know, this is just another step against the 99%, and we're going to stand up against it.
Right. So Don, in that piece though, there was this phrase, American Spring.
Yes.
This is a term that's been sort of batted around for a few months for people that have been following this closely, but for a lot of people, this might be a new term. Right. American Spring.
Well, it's you know, it's reminiscent of the Arab Spring a year ago, when you know, the people of several countries in the Middle East, most notably Egypt, took to the streets and in a series of protests over a period of 2-3 weeks resulted in the overthrow of the Mubarak dictatorship in Egypt. I think we're going to start seeing more and more Occupy actions in the weeks ahead as we move into the American Spring, so to speak.
Okay, and so real quick, Marcy, what do people mean by the American Spring? Like when Occupy movement people use this term, what do they mean by it?
I think they really mean that they're going to come back in full force. A lot of people say that they've been kind of laying low and underground. They're going to come back and really sweep the nation.
All right, well, let's move on because we want you to join the conversation. Give us a call at 877-575-FSTV or post a comment on our Facebook page. A National Day of Action last month taught occupiers about organizing on a national level. Marcy, what was this National Day of Action and what did it teach them?
It's F29. It was on February 29th, so Leap Day, also called Shut Down the Corporations. And you had Occupy groups from across the nation who organized and went out to Bank of America, to Walmart, Wells Fargo, ExxonMobil to shut them down, basically, to protest them and the power that they have now.
Okay, and so this was a really interesting interview you did with Carrie Koch of Occupy Portland, so let's watch that now.
Carrie, thank you so much for being with us today. Start us off by talking a little bit about what inspired Occupy Portland to really come together and call for this National Day of Action.
Well, I think that one of the biggest successes is pulling ALEC out into the light of day. They exist in this shady backroom reality where nobody really knows who they are, understands how much they impact the pieces of legislation that directly contribute to the destruction of our communities. So having the opportunity to nationally and internationally call out ALEC and get a lot of really strong media attention around that was one of the bigger successes of the Day of Action. And then our ability to use this action to sort of catapult into May Day is something that we're also looking forward to.
Now, talk a little bit more about the infrastructure that you put in place. How was it that you were able to get movements across the nation to join in on this movement and make it such a successful nationwide event?
Well, we put a lot of time into just doing some basic organizing, making phone calls, having conversations with people at the major occupies around the country, including Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Oakland, LA, Atlanta. But then over winter break, some of us, as we traveled home, took that opportunity to go visit occupies around the nation and sort of person to person sit down with the action teams of, say, Occupy Kansas City or Occupy Chicago and have a conversation about what would it look like to try to use this opportunity to build national infrastructure. So some good old-fashioned organizing basically was the groundwork laid to get this infrastructure in place, which essentially now amounts to over 70 cities participated, but the infrastructure was laid for over 90 cities being a part of the calls that we did, the national calls, conference calls, and the national email networks, and then building those direct relationships between Occupies. So that all still exists, and we're hoping to utilize that as Occupy goes into its spring bloom.
There's Carrie Coach of Occupy Portland, and Marcy, it seems like they had a lot of success with this collaboration, working between different cities. What can we expect next for this protest organizing?
Yeah, more collaboration. I think one of the most salient points that Carrie made was talking about how they've developed this skeleton almost for how they can organize on a national level all these little different occupations for something really big. And like she said, they're really aiming for May 1st as the jumping off point from which it really explodes. That American Spring that you were talking about earlier, we can hopefully expect that to come up around May 1st.
Okay, so May 1st, May Day. Don,
yes.
What interested me about that is that you have all of this talk about how protests nowadays, with all the young people that are using things digitally, all these digital tools, but as she pointed out in her interview, it was actually them going out and meeting face to face, the old shoe leather face-to-face meetings.
Good old-fashioned organizing. You can't beat it. And what these nationally coordinated protests in several cities across the country suggest is that there is developing an impressive level of organization and coordination between Occupy cities. And this belies the corporate media's characterization of the Occupy movement as essentially anarchic, disorganized, without focus, with unstructured. This is showing quite the opposite.
Okay, well, let's give our viewers a chance to weigh in. Give us a call at 877-575-FSTV. We're calling this a telephone mic check.
Mic check! Mic check!
Okay, we got a first caller on the line. Chris from Washington, you're on Occupy the Media.
How are you doing today?
We're doing great.
I'm calling from Olympia, Washington. And what I'm calling about is that the Occupy movement here in Olympia has decided to weigh in on the fight for public power in our county. We're a county of 250,000 between Seattle and Portland, Oregon. And it's the capital of our state, Washington. And what's going on here is there's a fight over public power. Basically, we are trying to collect petitions to put public power on the ballot this fall, and the Occupy people are helping us out in this effort on the May Day event. Instead of doing something that engages the police, we're engaging the citizenry to benefit all.
Okay, and Chris, what was the name of this organization that you're working on behalf of?
I'm an elected official in this county, so I am associated but cannot be involved in the organization since I represent the whole county. But the organization that is heading the effort for public power in this county is called the Thurston Public Power Initiative.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot for your call, Chris.
And thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Yeah. Don.
Great to hear our viewers up in the great state of Washington calling us in. I think this is a wonderful initiative, and we certainly would wish them well. Free Speech TV has a sizable number of very loyal viewers in the northwestern part of the country. So
absolutely. So anyone up there, check out that organization up there in Olympia. We have another caller, Sam, on the line from South Carolina. You're on Occupy the Media.
Okay, this is Sam from South Carolina. I'm calling about the gasoline prices keep going up. The oil companies are sending our gasoline and fuel to the other countries over there that's paying $8 and $9 a gallon. It's all about money.
Okay, well, Sam, we're actually, unfortunately, going to have to take a quick break, but thanks a lot for your call. Don't go away. Up next, we'll tell you about a new congressional candidate, also known as Hank the Cat, and his connection to the Citizens United ruling. But first, we want to hear from our social media viewers. Do you expect the Occupy movement to have a reawakening in the spring? To join the conversation, post your comments online at Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Antoinette June with your Occupy update. On April 16th, occupiers will greet Congress's return to D.C. with direct actions as they occupy power and show just how strong Occupy power is. For more information, please visit nowdc.org.